Cruella De Vil was so evil that the words cruel and devil were even in her name, but she wasn't always the horrible villain that Disney made her out to be. In fact, for the first big chunk of her life, Cruella was just a young girl who came from a rich and influential family and could have used a bit of true and unconditional love in her life. And after looking into the character's childhood a bit more, it becomes clear that a lot of what turned Cruella into the villainous fashionista that Disney introduced her as may have been caused by her ex and a few others that were close to her during her childhood. Cruella De Vil is arguably one of the most sinister villains in Disney history with her weird obsession with Dalmatian pelts, but had she known anything other than toxic love in life, that might have turned out totally different. Disney didn't explore much about Cruella's origin story, at least not until they released their live-action prequel in 2021, and as good as that movie was, it really didn't add much insight into Cruella's young life other than the true reason she wished to become a fashion designer. No, honestly, one of the best peeks into Cruella's life came from the author Serena Valentino, who created the book Evil Thing as the 7th installment in her Disney villain series. Evil Thing explores the early life of Cruella De Vil, and what makes this book the perfect look into the young villain's life is the fact that it's written from Cruella's perspective, meaning that readers were given a front row seat into everything that she experienced growing up surrounded by toxic love. Now, in other depictions of 101 Dalmatians and stories that include Cruella, the split-haired designer was married before, but none of her significant others were shown to really influence her life like her relationships in Evil Thing. This includes her husband in the original 1956 novel that inspired the Disney movie, whom she married because he was a furrier and kept his pelts at her home, or in the ABC series Once Upon a Time when she was married to Mr. Feinberg. In both of those occasions, it was noted that she had the capacity to love, or at least felt the need to get married, but the audience never really got to know Mr. Feinberg or her unnamed husband from the novel, and the creator certainly never made her husband or significant other impact her life. It wasn't until readers got to see Cruella's life through her eyes in Valentino's book that they realized that the young De Vil sought out love, but sadly was met with heartbreak time and time again. And this love took many different forms, from lovers to family members. Almost no relationship that Cruella ever had met the subjective standards of true love. And all of this played a massive part in the devilish person that Cruella grew up to become in the animated Disney classic 101 Dalmatians. Throughout the portion of her life that was shown in Evil Thing, young Cruella only had 2 young men in her life who ever showed interest in her, and sadly those both ended up in heartbreak. But not for the reason that you might think. You see, Valentino made it clear through Cruella's perspective that she was truly capable of love. The times in the book that she was shown to be in a relationship, Cruella was truly in love. And believe it or not, the 2 men that she ended up dating loved Cruella back. Now, it goes without saying that in the book, she was not seeing both of them at the same time. During their brief relationships with Cruella, both of her exes did everything that they could to make the future villain happy. And though Cruella herself knew that she was happy, it wasn't apparent to the people that she was dating. And that would end up hurting Cruella in a way that was so deep, it might have been what turned her into the heartless fashion designer that the world knows her as. According to the events of Evil Thing by Serena Valentino, the fact that Cruella seemed unhappy with her exes was the exact reason why they ended up leaving her. You know, it's the oldest line in the book. It's not you, it's me. And that's basically what these guys did to Cruella, only in this case, they might have meant it. It's implied in the book that Cruella's exes left her because they felt that it would be the only way for her to find true happiness, even though, in their hearts, they did truly love her. And the pain and emptiness that Cruella felt after being left all alone was the exact thing that could have shaped her into the bloodthirsty fashion designer that she grew up to be. Honestly, the closest thing that Cruella seemed to find that resembled true love was her friendship with Anita, and while it was shown to be wholesome, it also may have made it harder for the young villain to accept love in a different form. As many people know by now, one person's interpretation of what love is can be totally different from someone else's, and that's part of the compatibility process when it comes to dating. It's important to know if both people involved are searching for the same things in life, and do they have the same expectations when it comes to a relationship. That being said, a lot of people don't really understand that until they're older and can look back on a past relationship and realize why it didn't work out. So in Cruella's case, especially in Valentino's novel Evil Thing, the future fashion designer was likely too young to realize that there are many different forms of love and likely compared all of her relationships to each other, meaning that Cruella would have held her friendship with Anita to the same standard that she held her relationship with her parents or even her lovers. And the reason why that's so important is that Anita was arguably the one person in the novel who treated Cruella like an actual person and not some rich, spoiled princess. This made the way the men that loved her in the book treated her seem as though it wasn't enough for Cruella, and the fact that they left her, even though it was for supposedly a good reason, may have been what helped morph her into the villain that she was in the Disney film. film. You see, according to Valentino's book, when Cruella was younger, her best friend happened to be Anita, the same Anita from 101 Dalmatians. And honestly, the time that Cruella spent with Anita in the book is probably the most human that the young villain ever seen. She was shown to clearly care about Anita as Cruella helped to fund her education so that they could go to school together, despite Anita being part of a lower-class family. In return, Anita graced Cruella with true friendship, and interestingly enough, she was one of the only people in the book that seemed to bring out the good in Cruella. Their friendship was written as one that almost every child wishes that they had, and one without conditions. Anita wasn't Cruella's friend because of her money, and Cruella wasn't Anita's friend for any reason other that she enjoyed spending time with her. Sadly though, as great as that was, because Cruella was shown in the book to not really have any proper role models, she was never taught that everyone acts differently. So when she was shown love by her ex, her reaction was very nonchalant and resulted in them leaving her for the sake of her own happiness. And it's truly heartbreaking to think that Cruella was never able to find that happiness, and that was what slowly led her down the villainous path that was shown in 101 Dalmatians. And what's even more heartbreaking is the fact that as a child, she didn't even receive proper love from her parents, which made the impact of her exes leaving her even more painful, as if they were taking away the feeling of love that she had never had in her life. You see, at the beginning of Valentino's novel, the reader is introduced to Cruella's parents. Cruella's father was depicted as a calm man who seemed to love his daughter like any father should. The only issue was that he showed his love in a very materialistic way. There was an entire scene in the book that was centered on a set of earrings that he got for his daughter as a gift, and Cruella's father lied their price to her, claiming that they were very expensive. This was basically his way of saying, "See, look how much money I spent on you. That means I love you." And in a way, that slowly taught Cruella that someone's love can be measured by how much money they will spend on her, and that's obviously the wrong message. However, Cruella's mother might have been the worst influence of them all, and the lack of motherly love that she showed for her daughter made the pain that Cruella felt when her exes left her even more intense. In Evil Thing, Cruella's mother was shown to be very extravagant, and almost immediately the reader can tell that she was the inspiration for Cruella, who decided to mold her life after her mother's. The saddest part about the young villain's relationship with her mother, however, had to be the fact that Cruella's love was never truly reciprocated. Throughout the novel, Cruella practically pined for her mother's attention, but instead of receiving love and affection, the young child only ever received material gifts. Despite that though, Cruella clearly still wanted to find someone who would truly love her, and eventually she did. Sadly though, as Serena explained through Cruella's voice, any relationship that the young girl formed ended in heartbreak, with all of her lovers leaving her because they perceived she was unhappy. Little did they realize, after being left alone, Cruella grew even more unhappy as she slowly began to shift into the wicked Baroness that Disney introduced her as in their 1961 animated classic 101 Dalmatians. What do you think would have been different about Cruella's fate had she not met with bad apples when she was looking for someone to love her? Make sure you let us know in the comments below.